So we started talking about the Shema Yisrael, that we have three mitzvos right at the beginning. The first one being the unity of Hashem, just having a belief in the unity of Hashem. And the second one is loving Hashem, your God. And the third one is Vishinantam Levanecha, teaching it to your children, and the general mitzvah of studying Torah. And then the Rebbe said, really, every mitzvah, each of these mitzvahs has got three different modes. One of them is that it's a command. Simply put, right? It's a mitzvah. It's telling us this is what you shall do. The second one is an assurance telling you that, you will love Hashem, your God, for example. And C, the third one, very interesting, is that it's basically telling us a story. It's telling us a story that you will love Hashem, and this is the story. And the Rebbe is now going to explain and go through these different modes and explain what they mean, and continue on with the mimer. So the explanation of this matter is
Rabbi.
Yes.
I think there's a typo there. If you go back to the first line.
That's okay. We're going to go forward.
Oh, it says our God. The word our should be O, capital small O, not capital O.
We're going to have a lot of typos because I basically typed this up and I review it quickly, and so I hope they're not too off-putting.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to help you.
But I'm on a diet, so I should be off-putting. So, but that's another story.
He's telling you it was written with artificial intelligence. That's all.
I like pudding.
So it's no, I do voice to text, and then I go back and fix it up, but I don't get everything. All right. So the explanation of the matter is as follows. So we'll get for every mistake that you find, every typo that you find, you get 5 points. Okay, we'll keep track. So for Shema, what does the word Shema mean? So we say Shema Yisrael. Does Shema simply mean that you should hear? Shema Yisrael, you should hear? No. We know that the word Shema in the Torah can mean a few different things. It could mean to hear. It could mean to listen. So how is hearing different than listening? Well, you hear a siren, right? But you're not listening to the siren. Listening means that you're taking something from it, right? And the Shema really means to understand in the mind, right? To really accept it and receive it in your mind, to really, like we say in English, I hear what you're saying. When you say, I hear what you're saying, do we mean that you heard it? No, it means I understand what you're saying. And that's what the word hear means in the word Shema Yisrael. That we are to understand. And this refers to the contemplation. So we're supposed to contemplate upon something, and therefore it says, listen, Yisrael, for every single Jewish person. Every Jewish person, there's some Jewish people that it says, Afal pi shechata Yisraelhu, even though he sins, you know what he's called? He's called Yisrael. So even when a Jew sins, he's still referred to as Yisrael. So even this Jewish person who's in a state of, shall we say, imperfection, or perhaps we could even say gross imperfection, even to this Jew, we're telling him or her, Shema Yisrael. He must listen and contemplate that Hashem, our God, is one. The oneness of God. What does it mean that Hashem is our God? This means that Hashem is our power and our vitality. By the way, a person may look at this and say, Hashem is our power and our vitality. This is actually in the code of Jewish law. In the code of Jewish law, it says that when we say Elokeinu in a blessing, for example, or in the Shema, there is Hashem, there's the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the name of God, that is Hashem's particular name. But when we say Elokeinu, we're talking about the way that God is my life. God is my power, my vitality. You understand? So, and this is how we have a difference in the way, in the Torah, the way that God is referred to. God remains God, the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the four-letter name of God. God remains God whether you serve him or not. God remains God whether you're dedicated to him or not. God remains God whether you rebel against him or not, or whether you've never heard of him or not. The name of God remains the same. But Elokeinu, that he becomes my God, Elokeinu, our God, this is only through our active participation, through us contemplating and deciding that this is relevant to me. You understand? And this is so significant. Every time we daven, we say, Hashem Elokeinu, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you, Hashem Elokeinu, that he's my God, he's our God, right? That he is our vitality, he is our power. And again, this is not a novel point of Chassidic philosophy. This is brought in the very code of Jewish law, that this is supposed to be our intention when we say Elokeinu, which means the power, our power, and the vitality of the Jewish people. So that is that God is the vitality of the Jewish people. And what this means here is that in a certain sense, what do we mean that he's the vitality of the Jewish people? The whole concept, existence, concept, idea, story, history, present, future of the Jewish people, it's all God. That's what it is. And this is afterwards drawn into the world. For we say that God is one. Now, when we say God is one, have you guys ever seen this before? I should probably spell this out for you. So when we say Hashem Echad, God is one, so we have the Aleph, we have the Chet, and we have the Daled. The Aleph is also a reference to what we're going to say is Alufo Shel Olam. Have you guys ever heard of that terminology, Alufo Shel Olam? Generally, we say Ribono Shel Olam, the master of the world. But Alufo Shel Olam means the same thing. That he's the one in charge. He's the boss. He's the one in charge of the world. So Aleph is the Alufa Shel Olam, as the Rebbe will comment at the end of it. Now the Ches has a numeric value of 8. You count the letters of the Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet. And we realize in Judaism that not only does the letter have a meaning, but the value of the letter has a profound meaning. What's the meaning of 8 here in particular? That means that God's oneness pervades the 7 heavens and planet Earth below. So that covers up and down, right? The heavens above, the 7 heavens. You know what the 7 heavens are? Anybody familiar with the 7 heavens? So the Gemara in Chagiga goes and lists the 7 different heavens. Each one has a different name: Zavul, Machon, and the Gemara, the Talmud in Chagiga, tells us what the 7 heavens are and what's going on in each one. It's different than the paradigm used in Kabbalah of the 4 worlds, and I'm not sure how they correlate or correspond. But the Gemara tells us that there are 7 heavens, 7 spiritual realms. Okay. And that's above.
I'll tell you, I've never been to any of them, but I've traveled between them, and it takes a long time, 500 years from one to the other.
That's if you're walking. If you get on a plane, it's it's quicker.
Rabbi,
Mahalach
Rabbi,
Yes.
also 8 is nature and above nature.
But that's not interpreted in this particular letter, in this particular word. It's correct what you're saying, but one has to know what ideas to apply where. So what I'm sharing with you here, by the way, again, is brought in the Code of Jewish Law. So this is not, a person learning this can say, wow, this is Chassidic philosophy, is amazing. Yes, but you know what's also amazing is the Code of Jewish Law. The Code of Jewish Law tells us that when you say the Shema, you're supposed to be contemplating on this idea. So in order for you to, let me first tell you the idea, then we'll talk a little bit about the contemplation necessary. So Hashem is our God, He's our vitality, He is our life, and Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, Echad is one. That means that the Alufo Shalolam, the master of the world, permeates, comes down and descends into, and the oneness of God comes down and descends into the heavens above and the earth below and all 4 directions. So you have basically up, down, and all 4 directions, all physical and spiritual space included. It's all God's oneness comes and permeates all of it. Everything is included and incorporated within the absolute oneness of God. That's what you're supposed to be thinking about, that the oneness of God is not, what I'm trying to say here is, it's not a oneness of God being above as one and we're something else down here. No, that oneness pervades all of existence, all spiritual and all physical existence. There is no existence that is not pervaded, that is not comprised within that divine unity. If it's not contained within that divine unity, it does not exist, period. So that whole unity idea of echad, of God as one, we're meant to contemplate when we recite the Shema. So how long should it take you to say Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad? Or just the word Echad. So when you're saying Echad, how long does it take to say Echad? A quarter of a second, right? Echad. So you say Echad, when are you supposed to contemplate? So what some people do, which is wrong, and if you do it this way, you probably heard it from someone who is doing it that way. Then someone else sees someone doing it and thinks, oh, that's great to do. You'll hear sometimes in synagogue, some people will go, Echad. Well, it says in the Code of Jewish Law to not do that, and explains why you should not do that. The Alter Rebbe has a different approach, and that is that you actually take a moment afterwards to contemplate. So as much as you can understand why you're saying the word is great, but you don't have to fit it all in to that quarter of a second. It's hard to fit all of that information into the quarter of a second. Once you have thought about it enough, it goes quicker because you create neural pathways to remember that, and you can do it much more quickly. But you don't have to do it all while you're saying Echad. You could say Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. and stop and think and contemplate this idea that the oneness of God, that God is the chief, and that control of God and the oneness of God pervades the heavens above, the earth below, all four directions. Okay, so that's the contemplation that we do in order to fulfill this mitzvah. This is the meaning of God is one, the oneness of God in the world, and this is referred to as the higher unification. In Hebrew, it's called Yehuda Ilah, meaning that anything that exists, all that exists, this entire universe and all spiritual realms, they are all incorporated within the absolute oneness of God. And what that really means is that nothing really exists except for God. Just by the way, that's what that means. We've studied a little bit about this in other discourses. This is a very high idea that nothing exists except for Hashem. It's really only Hashem. Now, this is an idea that we can't fully grasp. We can't really understand. I mean, just by way of analogy, today, great scientists are grappling with quantum mechanics. And one thing they all agree on is that they can't get it. They can't understand it. They can't grasp it. It's elusive. But that's just by way of analogy. How much more so the oneness of Hashem in the world, it's a very high level of unity. We can't grasp it, but we can reach for it. We can maybe touch it. And that's the higher level of unity that we are meant to contemplate when we recite the Shema Yisrael. But then there is a lower form of unification. The lower form of unification is with the next line, which is Baruch Shem. Okay, so now let's go on. And afterwards, this is drawn down into the lower unification. And this is what we continue saying afterwards. We say, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuso Liolam Vaed. Blessed is the name of the glory of his majesty forever and ever. That's the Baruch Shem. So now we're saying that there is a Laolam Vaed, right? So we draw down the unity into this idea of the Vaed, forever. And la'olam va'ed, for the word echad becomes va'ed. So this is what's explained in Kabbalah, that and in other areas in Judaism, we have this idea of the interchanging letter interchange. Sometimes you'll have a word, but different letters can be switched for other letters. Okay. To the whole thing right now, but I'm trying to think of another area where we have where
Rabbi, you're breaking up.
For other letters.
Your video is frozen and your audio is breaking up.
More meaning.
Rabbi,
Becomes okay.
Your video is frozen and your
Can
audio
you hear
is
me now?
breaking up and freezing. Yeah, but your audio is freezing and breaking up. Now it's okay. If you're speaking, I think you're frozen.
Can you hear me now? Can you? Well,
Yeah, but it's breaking up.
there's really nothing I can. There's nothing I can do about it. All right.
Actually, there's one thing you can do. If it keeps on going, you can
Hear me now. If you can hear me, do me a favor. What?
There's one thing you can do if it keeps on going.
I can what?
Pause. You can stop the video because it'll use up less bandwidth and just keep on
No.
talking.
No, I'm not
We hear
hearing you. The connection is not.
Here, Baruch Hashem, we hear you now.
Video is the screen there as well.
Speak. You don't hear anything.
Okay, can you hear me now?
In pieces. Is there a location that's higher in the building?
I guess I got the answer. You can't hear me. Anything.
We don't hear anything. Anybody
No.
else?
I'm showing full connection here.
Isaac, Ezra? Is it me?
Also having
Hello?
difficulty hearing.
No, there's.
It looks like it rebooted. Can you hear me?
Just now?
Can't hear.
David, I hear you fine, but the rabbi, he's completely mute. I hear nothing right now. Before it was broken up. Now I hear nothing.
All broken up.
Right. So now it's even worse. I don't know what to do about this. May have to.
Rabbi, are you on a phone or are you on a laptop?
Okay. All right. So this.
Sorry, Isaac here. I could hear everything except it was 100 degrees without shade. Whatchamacallit? Why doesn't the rub just keep going? Rabbi, you can't do anything to fix it now, right? And some of us pick it up, some of us,
Correct.
I don't know what else to do. You want to restart your browser?
I'm going to continue on.
Your browser. But let him just continue.
All right.
Otherwise, we'll
All right. So the word. All right. For the word.
Sorry if anybody got upset.
I'm going to just highlight what I'm saying so you can look. For the word echad becomes va'ed through the interchange letter. So many times in Judaism and rabbinic thought, we can basically understand that one word is actually containing another word. So an aleph and vav, they're both connecting letters. You can actually switch an aleph and a vav. So the aleph of echad becomes the vav. Letters chet and ayin are both guttural letters, and thus they can be interchanged. And the dalet stays the same. So from echad, the echad has this amazing switcheroo where it becomes va'ed. So the aleph switched with a vav, the Rebbe explains now mystically, for the latter represents the idea of drawing down and the descent below. In other words, the vav starts with a knob on top, and then it comes down, And that's what the Vav represents. And what this means here is that the Aleph, representing God being the master, is now drawn down and descends below. In other words, now it comes into the world in a way that we can appreciate it, namely that now we can see and sense and feel God as the master, and this is called the lower unity. The Rebbe is going to explain here in the next chapter a little bit more. This means simply that he becomes manifest in the configuration of the universe and into the configuration of space and time. Okay. So what this means is that if I say that everything is united within Hashem and there is no space, there is no time, there is no me, there is no you, that's the higher unity. It's all just Hashem, and that's a little bit hard to grasp. But if I can say there is space, there is time, there is a universe, but Hashem is the one in control, that is the oneness of God coming down into the limitations of time and space, coming down into our reality. And this says, this is the simple meaning of the word va'ed, according to the configuration of time and the limitations of time. Va'ed is a word having to do with time. La'olam va'ed. La'olam va'ed is an even further, alludes to an even further descent because it's coming down. So la'olam is world, va'ed is time, so it's space, rather it's space and time. And it's even, and la'olam va'ed is a further descent, and for this reason, when we recite the first verse of the Shema, the idea of the universe is alluded to in a hidden manner. Okay? If we take a look up, where was the world? The world was contained, that was in our previous thing here. Here's the world. It's the last level of the ches that we said in the word echad. The ches is alluding to 7 heavens and the earth below. It's hidden, right? It's just alluded to in the word echad. Whereas in the word va'ed, la'olam va'ed, the word now becomes explicit. And this is a beautiful point that the Rebbe is making here. What is stated explicitly is the oneness of God. This is the higher unity. So in the higher unity, God is the oneness of God, and God himself are explicit. The world is just alluded to, hinted to in the ches. In the Baruch Shem, the universe is stated explicitly, la'olam. And the unity is alluded to, right? Through the echad that we get to through the switching of the letters, right? The unity of God is just alluded to through the switching of the letters. It's not there. We see the word va'ed. You look deeper, it's alluding to echad. So this is like the famous Chassidic aphorism that in the higher unity, God is obvious. The world is totally not obvious. In the lower unity, the world is obvious, and God is not the obvious. So the discourse of the Mittler Rebbe continues to explain that the verse, and you shall love Hashem, is a command, right? So are we commanded, is it a mitzvah in the Torah to love God? Yes. And it's also an assurance, it's saying that, this is what's going to happen, that if you contemplate the idea of the unity of God, you will love Hashem. Now, there's a well-known question on this command. That should be IE, not EG. How can there be a command on a feeling of the heart? God, give us a command, you shall love the Lord your God. You like this question? Have you ever heard this question before? How could the Torah command us to love? Can the Torah command you to love carrots? Would that be a reasonable command? I mean, you could pretend to love carrots. You could, act as if you're loving carrots, but if you don't like carrots, then you're plumb out of luck. Speaking of plums, speaking of produce. So, how can the Torah command you to love Hashem? And here's the answer. And therefore, he explains that the command is actually, to meditate upon those matters that will produce the love. And since this love, through the preceding meditation, is a sure thing, therefore, the command is stated concerning the love, which is the assured result. In other words, the object of it is to get to Hashem, but what the actual command is to meditate. Think about Hashem. Think about Hashem. And through thinking about Hashem, you know what that will lead to? That will lead to loving Hashem. If you contemplate God, you will love God. He then makes the following point, that in truth, one should not employ the term command for loving God. You know why? Now he's going to be speaking about a very high level, but let's go along with this to see what he's saying. This love is in the very nature of the person, as it's written, to love God, for He is your life. Says that in Deuteronomy, in the book of Devarim. Hihu chayacha. Now, if we would realize, and you'd think, and you'd realize that Hashem Himself, He is our vitality and our life. Well, with human love, if a person has a best friend, he will naturally have love in his heart for the other, right? So why do we need a command altogether? In other words, on the highest level, and the answer is obvious, the answer is going to be an obvious one, but it's good to articulate the question. If a person is in a proper state of consciousness, in a proper state of mind, really they shouldn't even need a command to love God. That would be like commanding a person to breathe. You shall breathe. What do you mean you shall breathe? I breathe, I do it automatically. So there is no command. So why is there a command to love Hashem? In truth, we should realize that Hashem is our life, and I love my own life, and so I should love Hashem. I shouldn't need a command on that. So the Mittler Rebbe explains that in truth, as far as the source of the soul is concerned, command is necessary. So if we were living in on a totally neshama level, a totally soul consciousness, we wouldn't need a command. However, as far as the soul becoming enclosed into the natural soul, so a commandment is required, that one must reflect upon this love. And this is why the verse states, with all of your heart, meaning with both of your inclinations. So the Torah says, you shall love Hashem b'chol levavcha, with all of your heart. And there's two bases there. We spoke about this last week, that telling us that you shall love God with both your godly soul and with your animal soul, with your good inclination, your positive inclination, and your evil inclination. You have to love Hashem with both. So now we see, a command is necessary because we have to actually contemplate to convince our animal soul. For the soul has descended below into the world, and to this lowest world, and has become invested in a body and an animal soul, and into the physical and corporeal world. This entire descent has been to affect the love of God also in the animal soul. Okay? So we did not descend into this world in order to get our godly soul to love God, because there we could have been, in a higher world doing that. The whole point is to convince our animal soul to love Hashem. Now, therefore, to achieve this, a command is necessary, because the command, now listen to this language here, because it empowers the soul to achieve this task. In other words, when the Torah tells us, you shall do this, so if we are, shall we say, on a less mature level, a command, I don't want to be commanded to do this or that, right? But on a more mature level, we understand that the command from the Torah is actually giving us the power to fulfill it. The fact that God is saying, you shall do this, empowers us to achieve it. It's a beautiful way to look at the whole idea of a mitzvah, of a command. And we could say that this is the explanation of the third way of looking at the command in this verse, namely, that it is not a command, it's not an assurance for the future. Because even when you're talking about an assurance, it's not something that is clear and obvious. But rather, it is telling a story. As explained elsewhere, the idea that the entire Torah is not said in the syntax of a command, but rather as the telling of a story, right? Which seems to be problematic. We could ask, since the whole idea of the Torah is a lesson book for the Jewish people, right? The word Torah means hora'ah, a lesson. So if the Torah is a lesson, sometimes it seems strange that the Torah is telling me a story. One second, is this a lesson or is this a story? Obviously, it's a story with a lesson, but why wouldn't you want to make it more lesson obvious, right? To make the lesson more obvious. You would assume that it would be written as a command, like the command, hear, O Israel, right? The Torah gives us the command. The command is for us to listen and to hear and to understand. Accordingly, all of the commands should be written in such a way that there's in the language of a command to every single Jew, in the singular, right? Shema Yisrael. This is not for everybody. Of course it's for everybody, but it's for you personally. Shema Yisrael. Your name happens to be Yisrael, like me, then you're lucky, right? It's like really, it's talking to me. But each of us are named Yisrael. Every Jew is called Yisrael. So when it says Shema Yisrael, now that's a great command. Here, let me unpack this a little bit to understand what the Rebbe is talking about. We're kind of working on a presupposition that the Torah is a book of law, a book of telling us mitzvot. In fact, the very first Rashi in Chumash, Rashi quotes Rabbi Yitzchok, who says that the Torah should really not have been starting from this point of in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That shouldn't be the starting point of the Torah. You know where the starting point of the Torah should be? Should be the first mitzvah. The first mitzvah is HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chadashim. This month will be to you the first month of all the months of the year. That's the first mitzvah given in the Torah. And that should be the starting place, because really that's the whole point of the Torah, is to convey the mitzvot. So this idea, this, shall we say, assumption that the Torah is really there to give us a mitzvah, that this is the meaning of this Rashi, right? The Torah, why all the stories? What if we didn't hear any of the stories of creation, of Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov? And we would just get the 613 mitzvahs. We'd be good to go. We know what we need to do. And not only that, the Rebbe goes on and says that even when we have a command in the Torah, most of the time, there is a grammatically, there is a language. It's called tzivui. Like Shema Yisrael is in the form of a tzivui, telling us that this is what you shall do. The Torah generally doesn't employ that grammar of using the command form, but rather, and Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, speak to the children of Israel and tell them something, right? Daber al b'nei Yisrael ve'amarta alehem, and say to them, v'asu lahem tzitzis, and they'll make tzitzit on their corners of the garment. What? Is it a story or is it a command? If it's a command, it should say, tzitzit ta'aseh al kanfei bigdeichem, right? Make tzitzit on the corner of your garment. No, there's a story, and Hashem spoke to Moshe, and Moshe speaks to the Jewish people and tell them that make these fringes on the corner of your garment. Most of the commandments in the Torah are told over in the language of a story, not in the language of a command. Okay? And this is what the Rebbe is saying here. This is a very beautiful point. The reason for this is that regarding the very essence of the soul, which is a part of God from above. Okay, so now what we're saying is that the fact that the Torah is being given over primarily as a story is because it's also speaking to the very essence of the soul. And as far as the very essence of the soul is concerned, it's part of God from above. Everything in the Torah is simply a story of the matter in the present tense, and no command is necessary. And also no assurance is needed for the future. Now, the fact that that in the Torah we also have commands and assurances, this is because the soul descends below and becomes invested in a body and into this lowly world. And in order for the soul to have an impact on the animal soul and on the body, so for this, a command is required and also an assurance. So this means that all three explanations that we gave, a story, an assurance, and a command, they're all an empowerment of the soul, that it should be able to have an impact on the animal soul and upon the body, because when we tell over the story that this is the truth of the matter according to the essence of the soul, this also adds strength and encouragement. And the service of the soul, for the service of the soul, that it has to work with the animal soul and the body. Okay? So even the fact, because let me explain a little bit. What do we mean here when we say that the Torah is a story? It's a statement, it's a story of who we are, of what we are, and what the fact of the matter is. You know, at my Seder, I oftentimes, you know, in the way of Chabad, you know, we attract a lot of people who want to come to a Seder, but they're not necessarily very orthodox. They might not be, they might not even believe in the Torah. They might not believe in God. They have all different kinds of, right? I mean, Jewish people coming from all different kinds of backgrounds. Baruch Hashem, they come to a Seder, and I have this line that I use with them. And it works, I think, especially well today. I tell them, I say, you know, because they say, Rabbi, and actually I had my bar mitzvah student asked me, he said, do you believe that the sea actually split and all of this? And I told him I do believe it, but here's another answer that I give to people who might be doubting. I tell them, one thing you cannot question: whether this happened in the world, whether this actually happened historically, you can question that, that's fine. But one thing that you cannot question One thing is, the fact of the matter is that this is our story. This is our story. Now, for me, it's very easy because our story fits with what I believe the actual historical fact to be. But what is our story? This is the fact of the matter. Sometimes it doesn't seem like the facts fit with the story. That doesn't make a difference. It was you say in Yiddish, kasha and maise. So you have a problem in understanding the story and how it fits and everything. But the truth of the matter is that every mitzvah is telling us the story of the truth of our being. So a Jewish person doing a mitzvah, performing a mitzvah, right? You see, you probably have seen the pictures of Santa Claus putting on tefillin. Who's seen that? I don't know if anyone can hear me here. And you see, those are so entertaining, right? If you're a Lubavitcher. If you're not a Lubavitch, if you're not coming from a Lubavitch background, sometimes people might be very offended by that, right? But it's like, there's nothing more natural. The guy might be dressed up like Santa Claus for Kratzmach, right? There's nothing more natural for a Jew. There's nothing more normal for a Jew than performing a mitzvah. Sometimes people say, "Oh, I can't believe he did the mitzvah." Really, you can't believe it? I can't believe someone didn't do it. This is our story. This is who we are. This is what we are. This is our story. Now you might say it's not just a story, it's a command. Yeah, that's what Maimer is saying. It's a story, it's an assurance, and it's a command because that's speaking to different levels of our psyche. So to our essential soul, to our neshama, the Torah is coming across and saying, this is the story. Speak to the children of Israel and tell them, put fringes on the corner of the garment, because this is who we are, this is what we are. And the fact that even the animal soul, even the, shall we say, our conscious mind, that's kind of the animal soul, is our conscious mind. Our conscious mind understands that the essential soul, for the essential soul, this is a story, because this is the fact of who we are, that empowers us to perform the mitzvah. Because we realize the truth of who we are. This is, Manas Friedman tells the story of, the Jewish guy that shows up in synagogue on Yom Kippur, and the fellow sits next. Christian guy is coming and visiting to see what synagogue service is about. He sits next to the Jew. He says, "Oh, this is Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement." So he says, he gets into a conversation about God, and the Jewish fellow says, "I don't believe in God." "You don't believe in God? What are you doing in synagogue on Yom Kippur?" He says, "What am I doing in synagogue Yom Kippur? I'm a Jew." So in a sense, our story, the fact of who we are, in a somewhat of a distorted way, sometimes bypasses belief in God, and simply this is our story, this is who we are. I'm not saying that we should strive for that, but it underscores the fact of who we are. Is he doing it because he was commanded? No, he doesn't believe in the command. He doesn't believe in the commander. Consciously. But he's there because his soul knows this is who we are, you see. So there's a certain fact of the matter that we are fulfilling, that we are becoming, that we are being through the fulfillment of the mitzvot. And this is the idea of the mitzvah being the telling over of a story. And also the assurance of the Torah, I guess that should be, that when we put forth effort, we will find and we will succeed. Okay, so the idea of the assurance is that when you contemplate the oneness of God, you will come to loving Hashem. Right now, maybe you're not there, but that on another level, it's an assurance telling us, Shema Yisrael, listen, hear that Israel, that Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. You know what's going to happen. You will love Hashem. That's an assurance that that's what's going to happen. Right now you might not feel it, but the Torah is telling us, put in the effort and you will succeed. That, of course, is also a great empowerment. And also the idea of the command is also giving strength, empowering us. For the command also has a meaning of connection and attachment, that through this command, the human being that is fulfilling the mitzvah becomes connected with the very essence of God. So when we have, there's another, the Rebbe kind of throws in here, another meaning that the command, that tzav, what does tzav mean? So we know, according to Chassidic philosophy, tzav means to command. Tzav also means to connect. And so when we fulfill, even on the level of the animal soul, our conscious mind, trying to bring ourselves into the truth of the story, right? We understand that through this command that God is giving us, this is the way that my soul can actually connect, not just my soul, my animal soul can connect with the very essence of God. And all of these different levels are contained within each and every mitzvah. It is the story of the truth. It's an assurance of what we will become. And it's also a command and a connection for us in the present right now. Okay, to be continued. Thank you all for joining. Any questions or comments, please? We'll
Want to give a 1 minute wrap up?
The 1 minute wrap up is that the Torah has 3 different levels of empowerment, each one addressing a different level of our psyche. The one level is our conscious mind. And our conscious mind, very much connected with our animal soul, the Torah says, you got to do this. Okay? It's a command. But that command also means that it's a connection and an empowerment that you can do this. Okay? The next level is to our intellectual soul, where the Torah says, if you perform this mitzvah, this will become your truth. This will become your truth. And then for the godly soul, we have the story. The Torah is actually told in the voice of a story. A story is being told. Once upon a time, there was a Jew who put on tzitzis. Once upon a time, there was a Jew that kept the Shabbat. That is the truth of the matter. That is the truth of who we are. And that level is speaking directly to the godly soul, but it also empowers our animal soul, because the animal soul comes to hear and understand this is the truth of who I am. So these are 3 different levels of empowerment that the mitzvah contains. That's the recap.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Rabbi.
I think
You're very
some-
welcome.
summarizing was just perfect. Just perfect. Thank you.
All right. Be very well. Have a good rest of the week.
Thank
too.
you. Bye-bye. Как он правильно все